Hi, and welcome to Pages Aloud. We're so glad you're here. Today we're continuing our journey through the English dictionary with our continuation of the letter A. Whether you're learning, curious, or just love words, this one's for you. Let's begin. Antivirulous, preventing the contagion of smallpox. Antivenereal, good against venereal poison, antisyphilitic. Antivivisection, opposition to vivisection. Antivivisectionist, one opposed to vivisection. Antizymic, preventing fermentation. Antizymotic, preventing fermentation or decomposition. Antler, the entire horn or any branch of the horn of a cervine animal, as of a stag. Antlered, furnished with antlers. Antile, of antlia. Antlia, the spiral tubular proboscis of Lepidopterous insects. See Lepidoptera. Antlion, a neuropterous insect the larva of which makes in the sand a pitfall to capture ants, etc. The common American species is Myrmeleon obsoletus. The European is M. formicarius. Antici, alt of Antoecians. Antoecians, those who live under the same meridian but on opposite parallels of latitude north and south of the equator. Antonomasia, the use of some epithet or the name of some office, dignity, or the like instead of the proper name of the person, as when His Majesty is used for a king, or when instead of Aristotle we say the philosopher, or conversely the use of a proper name instead of an appellative, as when a wise man is called a Solomon or an eminent orator a Cicero. Antonomastic, pertaining to or characterized by antonomasia. Antonomacy, antonomasia. Antonym, a word of opposite meaning, a counterterm, used as a correlative of synonym. Antorbital, pertaining to or situated in the region of the front of the orbit. Antergastic, see antiorgastic. Antozone, a compound formerly supposed to be modification of oxygen, but now known to be hydrogen dioxide, so called because apparently antagonistic to ozone, converting it into ordinary oxygen. Antral, relating to an antrum. Anter, a cavern. Antrorse, forward or upward in direction. Antrovert, to bend forward. Antra, of antrum. Antrum, a cavern or cavity, sp, an anatomical cavity or sinus. Antrustion, a vassal or voluntary follower of Frankish princes in their enterprises. Ant thrush, one of several species of tropical birds of the Old World of the genus Pitta, somewhat resembling the thrushes and feeding chiefly on ants. Anubis, an Egyptian deity, the conductor of departed spirits, represented by a human figure with the head of a dog or fox. Anura, one of the orders of amphibians characterized by the absence of a tail, as the frogs and toads. Anurus, destitute of a tail as the frogs and toads. Anury, non-secretion or defective secretion of urine, estuary. Anus, the posterior opening of the alimentary canal through which the excrements are expelled. Anvil, an iron block usually with a steel face upon which metals are hammered and shaped. Anxietude, the state of being anxious, anxiety. Anxieties, of anxiety. Anxiety, concern or solicitude respecting some thing or event future or uncertain which disturbs the mind and keeps it in a state of painful uneasiness. Anxious, full of anxiety or disquietude, greatly concerned or solicitous, especially respecting something future or unknown, being in painful suspense, applied to persons, as anxious for the issue of a battle. Anxiously, in an anxious manner, with painful uncertainty, solicitously. Anxiousness, the quality of being anxious, great solicitude, anxiety. Any, one indifferently out of an indefinite number, one indefinitely whosoever or whatsoever it may be. Anybody, anyone out of an indefinite number of persons, anyone, any person. Anyhow, in any way or manner whatever, at any rate, in any event. Anyone, one taken at random rather than by selection, anybody, commonly written as two words. Anything, any object, act, state, event, or fact, whatever, thing of any kind, something or other, odd, as I would not do it for anything. Anythingarian, one who holds to no particular creed or dogma. Anyway, alt of anyways, anywise, at all, anywhere, in any place, anywhither, to or towards any place, anywise, in any wise or way, at all. Aeonian, pertaining to Aeonia in B/Otia or to the Muses who were supposed to dwell there. Aorist, a tense in the Greek language which expresses an action as completed in past time but leaves it in other respects wholly indeterminate. Aoristic, indefinite, pertaining to the aorist tense. Aorta, the great artery which carries the blood from the heart to all parts of the body except the lungs, the main trunk of the arterial system. Aortic, of or pertaining to the aorta. Aortitis, inflammation of the aorta. Aodat, an African sheep-like quadruped, the Amatragus trigelaphus, having a long mane on the breast and 4 legs. It is perhaps the chamois of the Old Testament. Apace, with a quick pace, quick, fast, speedily. Apaches, a group of nomadic North American Indians including several tribes native of Arizona, New Mexico, etc. Apagogy, an indirect argument which proves a thing by showing the impossibility or absurdity of the contrary. Apagogic, alt of apagogical. Apagogical, proving indirectly by showing the absurdity or impossibility of the contrary. Apaid, paid, pleased. Appair, to impair or become impaired, to injure. Appalachian, see appellation. Appanage, same as uppunage. Apanthropy, an aversion to the company of men, a love of solitude. Appar, alt of appara, appara, see mataco. Appareo, a kind of pack saddle used in the American military service and among the Spanish Americans. It is made of leather stuffed with hay moss or the like. Aparithmesis, enumeration of parts or particulars. Apart, separately in regard to space or company, in a state of separation as to place, aside. Apartment, a room in a building, a division in a house separated from others by partitions. Apartness, the quality of standing apart. Apastron, that point in the orbit of a double star where the smaller star is farthest from its primary. Apathetic, alt of apathetical. Apathetical, void of feeling, not susceptible of deep emotion, passionless, indifferent. Apathetically, in an apathetic manner. Apathist, one who is destitute of feeling. Apathistical, apathetic, unemotional. Apathies, of apathy. Apathy, want of feeling, privation of passion, emotion, or excitement. Dispassion, applied either to the body or the mind. As applied to the mind, it is a calmness, indolence, or state of indifference incapable of being ruffled or roused to active interest or exertion by pleasure, pain, or passion. Appetite, native phosphate of lime occurring usually in 6-sided prisms, color often pale green, transparent, or translucent. A palm, see a palm. Ape, a quadrumanous mammal ESP of the family Simiadae, having teeth of the same number and form as in man and possessing neither a tail nor cheek pouches. Aped, of ape. Aping, of ape. A peak, in a vertical line. The anchor in a peak when the cable has been sufficiently hove in to bring the ship over it, and the ship is then said to be hove apeak. Apehood, the state of being an ape. Apellus, destitute of skin. Apennine, of pertaining to or designating the Apennines, a chain of mountains extending through Italy. Apepsy, defective digestion, indigestion. Aper, one who apes. Aperia, the wild guinea pig of Brazil, Cavia aperia. Aperient, gently opening the bowels, laxative. Aperitive, serving to open, aperient. Apert, open, evident, undisguised. Apertion, the act of opening, an aperture. Apertly, openly, clearly. Apertness, openness, frankness. Aperture, the act of opening. Aperies, of apiary. Apiary, a place where apes are kept. Apetalous, having no petals or flower leaves. See illust, under anther. Apetalousness, the state of being apetalous. Apexes, of apex. Apices, of apex. Apex, the tip-top point or angular summit of anything. As the apex of a mountain spire or cone, the apex or tip of a leaf. Aphoresis, same as apheresis. Aphakia, an anomalous state of refraction caused by the absence of the crystalline lens as after operations for cataract. The remedy is the use of powerful convex lenses. Aphakial, pertaining to aphakia as aphakial eyes. Aphaniptera, a group of wingless insects of which the flea in the type. See flea. Aphanipterous, of or pertaining to the Aphaniptera. Aphanite, a very compact dark-colored /oct consisting of hornblende or pyroxene and feldspar, but neither of them in perceptible grains. Aphanitic, resembling aphanite, having a very fine-grained structure. Aphasia, alt of aphacy. Aphacy, loss of the power of speech or of the appropriate use of words, the vocal organs remaining intact and the intelligence being preserved. It is dependent on injury or disease of the brain. Aphasic, pertaining to or affected by aphasia, speechless. Aphelia, of aphelion. Aphelion, that point of a planet's or comet's orbit which is most distant from the sun, the opposite point being the perihelion. Aphiliotropic, turning away from the sun, set of leaves, etc. Aphiliotropism, the habit of bending from the sunlight, set of certain plants. Aphemia, loss of the power of speaking while retaining the power of writing, a disorder of cerebral origin. Apheresis, the dropping of a letter or syllable from the beginning of a word, e.g., cute for acute. Aphasis, the loss of a short, unaccented vowel at the beginning of a word, the result of a phonetic process, as squire for esquire. Aphetic, shortened by dropping a letter or a syllable from the beginning of a word, as an aphetic word or form. Aphatism, an aphatized form of a word. Aphatize, to shorten by aphasis. Aphid, one of the genus Aphis, an aphidian. Aphids, see Aphis. Aphidian, of or pertaining to the family Aphidae. Aphidivorous, devouring aphids, aphidophagus. Aphidophagus, feeding upon aphids or plant lice as do beetles of the family Coccinellidae. Aphilanthropy, want of love to mankind, the opposite of philanthropy. Aphis, a genus of insects belonging to the order Hemiptera and family Aphidae, including numerous species known as plant lice and green flies. Aphis lion, the larva of the lace-winged flies, Chrysopa, which feeds voraciously upon aphids. The name is also applied to the larvae of the ladybugs. Aphlogistic, flameless, as an aphlogistic lamp in which a coil of wire is kept in a state of continued ignition by alcohol without flame. Aphonia, alt of aphony. Aphony, loss of voice or vocal utterance. Aphonic, alt of aphonous. Aphonous, without voice, voiceless, non-vocal. Aphorism, a comprehensive maxim or principle expressed in a few words, a sharply defined sentence relating to abstract truth rather than to practical matters. Aphorismatic, alt of aphorismic. Aphorismic, pertaining to aphorisms or having the form of an aphorism. Aphorismer, a dealer in aphorisms. Aphorist, a writer or utterer of aphorisms. Aphoristic, alt of aphoristical, aphoristical, in the form of or of the nature of an aphorism, in the form of short, unconnected sentences, as an aphoristic style. Aphoristically, in the form or manner of aphorisms, pithily. Aphorize, to make aphorisms. Aphrite, see under calcite. Aphrodisiac, alt of aphrodisiacal. Aphrodisiacal, exciting venereal desire, provocative to venery. Aphrodisian, pertaining to Aphrodite or Venus. Aphrodisian dames, that is courtesans. Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love corresponding to the Venus of the Romans. Aphroditic, venereal. Aphtha, one of the whitish specks called aphthy. Aphthy, roundish pearl-colored specks or flakes in the mouth, on the lips, etc., terminating in white sloughs. They are commonly characteristic of thrush. Aphthoid, of the nature of aphthy, resembling thrush. Aphthong, a letter or a combination of letters employed in spelling a word, but in the pronunciation having no sound. Aphthous, pertaining to or caused by aphthy, characterized by aphthy, as aphthous ulcers, aphthous fever. Aphyllis, destitute of leaves as the broom rape, certain euphorbiaceous plants, etc. Apiaceous, umbelliferous. Apian, belonging to bees. Apiarian, of or relating to bees. Apiarist, one who keeps an apiary. Apiary, a place where bees are kept, a stand or shed for bees, a bee house. Apical, at or belonging to an apex tip or summit. Apician, belonging to Apicius, a notorious Roman epicure, hence applied to whatever is peculiarly refined or dainty and expensive in cookery. Apicular, situated at or near the apex. Apical, apiculate, alt of apiculated. Apiculated, terminated abruptly by a small distinct point as a leaf. Apiculture, rearing of bees for their honey and wax. Apiece, each by itself, by the single one, to each, as the share of each, as these melons cost a shilling apiece. Apiece, in pieces or to pieces. Apiked, trimmed. Apiol, an oily liquid derived from parsley. Apiologist, a student of bees. Apis, a genus of insects of the order Hymenoptera, including the common honeybee, Apis mellifica, and other related species. See honeybee. Apish, having the qualities of an ape, prone to imitate in a servile manner. Hence, ape-like, fantastically silly, foppish, affected, trifling. Apishly, in an apish manner, with servile imitation, foppishly. Apishness, the quality of being apish, mimicry, foppery. Apitpat, with quick beating or palpitation, pitapat. Aplacental, belonging to the aplacentata, without placenta. Aplacentata, mammals which have no placenta. Aplacophora, a division of Amphineura in which the body is naked or covered with slender spines or setae, but is without shelly plates. Aplanatic, having two or more parts of different curvatures so combined as to remove spherical aberration, set of a lens. Aplanatism, freedom from spherical aberration. Aplastic, not plastic or easily molded. Aplomb, assurance of manner or of action, self-possession. Aplotomy, simple incision. Aplustry, an ornamental appendage of wood at the ship's stern, usually spreading like a fan and curved like a bird's feather. Aplysia, a genus of marine mollusks of the order Tectobranchiata, the sea hare. Some of the species, when disturbed, throw out a deep purple liquor which colors the water to some distance. Apneumona, an order of holothurians in which the internal respiratory organs are wanting, called also apoda or apods. Apnea, partial privation or suspension of breath, suffocation. Apo, a prefix from a Greek preposition. It usually signifies from away, from off, or asunder, separate, as in apocope, a cutting off, apostate apostle, one sent away, apocarpus. Apocalypse, the revelation delivered to St. John in the Isle of Patmos near the close of the 1st century, forming the last book of the New Testament. Apocalyptic, alt of apocalyptical. Apocalyptical, of or pertaining to a revelation or specifically to the revelation of St. John, containing or of the nature of a prophetic revelation. Apocalyptist, the writer of the apocalypse. Apocalyptically, by revelation, in an apocalyptic manner. Apocarpus, either entirely or partially separate as the carpels of a compound pistil, opposed to syncarpus. Apocopate, to cut off or drop, as to apocopate a word or the last letter syllable or part of a word. Apocopated, shortened by apocope, as an apocopate form. Apocopation, shortening by apocope, the state of being apocopated. Apocope, the cutting off or omission of the last letter syllable or part of a word. Apocrisiary, alt of apocrisiarius. Apocrisiarius, a delegate or deputy, especially the Pope's nuncio or legate at Constantinople. Apocrustic, astringent and repellent. Apocryphous, of apocrypha. Apocrypha, something is a writing that is of doubtful authorship or authority, formerly used also adjectively. Apocryphal, pertaining to the Apocrypha. Apocryphalist, one who believes in or defends the Apocrypha. Apocryphally, in an apocryphal manner, mythically, not indisputably. Apocryphalness, the quality or state of being apocryphal, doubtfulness of credit or genuineness. Apocynaceous, alt of Apocyneus. Apocyneus, belonging to or resembling a family of plants of which the dogbane, Apocynon, is the type. Apocynon, a bitter principle obtained from the dogbane, Apocynon cannabinum. Apod, alt of apodal. Apodal, without feet, footless. Apods, of apode. Apods, of apode. Apode, one of certain animals that have no feet or foot-like organs. ESP, one of certain fabulous birds which were said to have no feet. Apoda, a group of cirripeds destitute of foot-like organs. Apodon, apodal, apodictic, alt of apodictical. Apodictic, alt of apodictical. Apodictical, alt of apodictical. Apodictical, self-evident, intuitively true, evident beyond contradiction. Apodictically, alt of apodictically. Apodictically, so as to be evident beyond contradiction. Apodeme, one of the processes of the shell which project inwards and unite with one another in the thorax of many crustacea. Apodixis, full demonstration. Apodosis, the consequent clause or conclusion in a conditional sentence expressing the result and thus distinguished from the protasis or clause which expresses a condition. Thus in this sentence, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. The former clause is the protasis and the latter the apodosis. Apodus, apodal, apod. Apoditerium, the apartment at the entrance of the baths or in the palestra where one stripped, a dressing room. Apogaic, apogean. Apogamic, relating to apogamy. Apogamy, the formation of a bud in place of a fertilized ovule or oospore. Apogeal, apogean. Apogean, connected with the apogee, as apogean, neap, tides which occur when the moon has passed her apogee. Apogee, that point in the orbit of the moon which is at the greatest distance from the earth. Apogeotropic, bending away from the ground, set of leaves, etc. Apogeotropism, the apogeotropic tendency of some leaves and other parts. Apograph, a copy or transcript. Apoheal, of or pertaining to a portion of the horn of the hyoid bone. Apoise, balanced. Apolar, having no radiating processes, applied particularly to certain nerve cells. Apolostic, devoted to enjoyment. Apollinarian, in honor of Apollo, as the Apollinarian Games. Apollinaris water, an effervescing alkaline mineral water used as a table beverage. It is obtained from a spring in Apollinarisburg near Bonn. Apollo, a deity among the Greeks and Romans. He was the god of light and day, the sun god, of archery, prophecy, medicine, poetry, and music, etc., and was represented as the model of manly grace and beauty, called also Phoebus. Apollonian, alt of Apollonic. Apollonic, of pertaining to or resembling Apollo. Apollyon, the destroyer, a name used, Rev 9. 11, for the angel of the bottomless pit answering to the Hebrew Abaddon. Apologer, a teller of apologues. Apologetic, alt of apologetical. Apologetical, defending by words or arguments, said or written in defense or by way of apology, regretfully excusing, as an apologetic essay. Apologetically, by way of apology. Apologetic, that branch of theology which defends the Holy Scriptures and sets forth the evidence of their divine authority. Apologist, one who makes an apology, one who speaks or writes in defense of a faith, a cause, or an institution, especially one who argues in defense of Christianity. Apologized, of apologize. Apologizing, of apologize. Apologize, to make an apology or defense. Apologizer, one who makes an apology, an apologist. Apologue, a story or relation of fictitious events intended to convey some moral truth, a moral fable. Apologies, of apology. Apology, something said or written in defense or justification of what appears to others wrong or of what may be liable to disapprobation, justification, as Tertullian's apology for Christianity. Apomachometer, an instrument for measuring the height of objects. Apomachometry, the art of measuring the distance of objects afar off. Apomorphia, alt of apomorphine. Apomorphine, a crystalline alkaloid obtained from morphia. It is a powerful emetic. Aponeuroses, of aponeurosis. Aponeurosis, any one of the thicker and denser of the deep fasciae which cover and vest and the terminations and attachments of many muscles. They often differ from tendons only in being flat and thin. See fascia. Aponeurotic, of or pertaining to an aponeurosis. Aponeurotomy, dissection of aponeuroses. Apopemptic, sung or addressed to one departing. Valedictory, as apoplectic songs or hymns. Apophasis, a figure by which a speaker formally declines to take notice of a favorable point, but in such a manner as to produce the effect desired. Apophlegmatic, designed to facilitate discharges of phlegm or mucus from mouth or nostrils. Apophlegmatism, the action of apophlegmatics. Apophlegmatizant, an apophlegmatic. Apothem, see apothem. Apophthegmatic, alt of apophthegmatical. Apophthegmatical, same as apophthegmatic. Apophage, the small hollow curvature given to the top or bottom of the shaft of a column where it expands to meet the edge of the fillet, called also the scape. Apophyllite, a mineral relating to the zeolites usually occurring in square prisms or octahedrons with pearly luster on the cleavage surface. It is a hydrous silicate of calcium and potassium. Apophysis, a marked prominence or process on any part of a bone. Apoplectic, alt of apoplectical. Apoplectical, relating to apoplexy, affected with inclined to or symptomatic of apoplexy. As an apoplectic person, medicine, habit, or temperament, symptom, fit, or stroke. Apoplectiform, alt of apoplectoid. Apoplectoid, resembling apoplexy. Apoplex, apoplexy. Apoplexed, affected with apoplexy. Apoplexy, sudden diminution or loss of consciousness, sensation, involuntary motion, usually caused by pressure on the brain. Aporetical, doubting, skeptical. Aporious, of aporia, aporia, a figure in which the speaker professes to be at a loss what course to pursue, where to begin, to end, what to say, etc. Aporosa, a group of corals in which the coral is not porous, opposed to perforata. Aporos, without pores. A port, on or towards the port or left side. Set of the helm. Aposiopesis, a figure of speech in which the speaker breaks off suddenly, as if unwilling or unable to state what was in his mind, as I declare to you that his conduct, but I cannot speak of that here. Apositic, destroying the appetite or suspending hunger. Apostasies, of apostasy, apostasy, an abandonment of what one has voluntarily professed, a total desertion of departure from one's faith principles or party, esp the renunciation of a religious faith, as Julian's apostasy from Christianity. Apostate, one who has forsaken the faith principles or party to which he before adhered, esp one who has forsaken his religion for another, a pervert, a renegade. Apostatic, apostatical, apostatical, apostate, apostasized, of apostasize, apostasizing, of apostasize, apostasize, to renounce totally a religious belief once professed, to forsake one's church, the faith or principles once held, or the party to which one has previously adhered. Apostamate, to form an abscess, to swell and fill with pus. Apostamation, the formation of an aposteme, the process of suppuration. Apostematus, pertaining to or partaking of the nature of an aposteme. Aposteme, an abscess, a swelling filled with purulent matter. A posteriori, characterizing that kind of reasoning which derives propositions from the observation of facts, or by generalizations from facts arrives at principles and definitions, or infers causes from effects. This is the reverse of a priori reasoning. Apostle, alt of apostle, apostle, a marginal note on a letter or other paper, an annotation. Apostle, literally, one sent forth, a messenger. Specifically, one of the 12 disciples of Christ specially chosen as his companions and witnesses and sent forth to preach the gospel. Apostleship, the office or dignity of an apostle. Apostolate, the dignity, office, or mission of an apostle, apostleship. Apostolic, alt of apostolical, apostolical, pertaining to an apostle or to the apostles, their times, or their peculiar spirit, as an apostolical mission, the apostolic age. Apostolically, in an apostolic manner. Apostolicalness, apostolicity, apostolicism, alt of apostolicity, apostolicity, the state or quality of being apostolical. Apostrophe, a figure of speech by which the orator or writer suddenly breaks off from the previous method of his discourse and addresses in the second person some person or thing absent or present. Apostrophic, pertaining to an apostrophe, grammatical or rhetorical. Apostrophize, to address by apostrophe. Apostome, see aposteme. Apotactite, one of a sect of ancient Christians who in supposed imitation of the first believers renounced all their possessions. Apodolism, the result or issue. Apotelismatic, relating to the casting of horoscopes. Apothecaries, of apothecary. Apothecary, one who prepares and sells drugs or compounds for medicinal purposes. Apothecia, of apothecium. Apothecium, the assiduous fructification of lichens forming masses of various shapes. Apotheme, alt of apotheme. Apothegmatic, alt of apothegmatical. Apothegmatical, pertaining to or in the manner of an apotheme, sententious, pithy. Apothegmatist, a collector or maker of apothegms. Apothegmatize, to utter apothegms or short and sententious sayings. Apotheme, the perpendicular from the center to one of the sides of a regular polygon. Apotheosis. Of apotheosis. Apotheosis. The act of elevating a mortal to the rank of and placing him among the gods. Deification. Apotheosize. To exalt to the dignity of a deity. To declare to be a god. To deify. To glorify. Apotheosis. A place on the south side of the chancel in the primitive churches furnished with shelves for books, vestments, etc. Apotome. The difference between two quantities commensurable only in power, as between I, 1/2, 2, and 1, or between the diagonal and side of a square. Aposem. A decoction or infusion. Aposemical. Pertaining to or resembling a decoction. Apair. To impair, to grow worse. Appellation. Of or pertaining to a chain of mountains in the United States commonly called the Allegheny Mountains. Appalled. Of appall. Appalling. Of appall. Appall. To make pale, to blanch. Appalment. Depression occasioned by terror, dismay. Appanage. The portion of land assigned by a sovereign prince for the subsistence of his younger sons. Appanagist. A prince to whom an appanage has been granted. Apparailing. Preparation. Apparatus. Of apparatus. Apparatuses. Of apparatus. Apparel. External clothing. Vesture. Garments. Dress. Garb. External habiliments or array. Apparelled. Of apparel. Apparelled. Of apparel. Appareling. Of apparel. Appareling. Of apparel. Appearance. Appearance. Apparency. Appearance. Apparent. Capable of being seen or easily seen. Open to view. Visible to the eye. Within sight or view. Apparently. Visibly. Apparentness. Plainness to the eye or the mind. Visibleness. Obviousness. Apparition. The act of becoming visible. Appearance. Visibility. Apparitional. Pertaining to an apparition or to apparitions. Spectral. Apparator. Formerly an officer who attended magistrates and judges to execute their orders. A palm. A hand open and extended so as to show the palm. Appy. To pay. To satisfy or appease. Appeach. To impeach. To accuse. To asperse. To inform against. To reproach. Appeacher. An accuser. Appeachment. Accusation. Appealed. Of appeal. Appealing. Of appeal. Appeal. To make application for the removal of a cause from an inferior to a superior judge or court for a rehearing or review on account of alleged injustice or illegality in the trial below. We say the cause was appealed from an inferior court. Appealable. Capable of being appealed against, that may be removed to a higher tribunal for decision, as the cause is appealable. Appealant. An appellant. Appealer. One who makes an appeal. Appeared. Of appear. Appearing. Of appear. Appear. To come or be in sight. To be in view. To become visible. Appearance. The act of appearing or coming into sight. The act of becoming visible to the eye, as his sudden appearance surprised me. Appearer. One who appears. Appearingly. Apparently. Appeasable. Capable of being appeased or pacified. Placable. Appeasing. Of appease. Appease. To make quiet. To calm. To reduce to a state of peace. To still. To pacify. To dispel anger or hatred. As to appease the tumult of the ocean or of the passions. To appease hunger or thirst. Appeasement. The act of appeasing or the state of being appeased. Pacification. Appeaser. One who appeases, a pacifier. Appeasive. Tending to appease. Appellable. Appealable. Appellancy. Capability of appeal. Appellant. Relating to an appeal. Appellate. Appellate. Pertaining to or taking cognizance of appeals. Appellation. The act of appealing, appeal. Appellative. pertaining to a common name, serving as a distinctive denominative, naming. Appellatively, after the manner of nouns appellative, in a manner to express whole classes or species, as Hercules is sometimes used appellatively, that is, as a common name to signify a strong man. Appellativeness, the quality of being appellative. Appellatory, containing an appeal. Appellee, the defendant in an appeal, opposed to appellant. Appeller, the person who institutes an appeal or prosecutes another for a crime. Appanage, see appanage. Appended, of append. Appending, of append. Append, to hang or attach to as by a string so that the thing is suspended, as a seal appended to a record. The inscription was appended to the column. Appendage, something appended to or accompanying a principal or greater thing though not necessary to it, as a portico to a house. Appendaged, furnished with or supplemented by an appendage. Appendance, something appendant. Appendant, hanging. Annexed, adjunct. Concomitant, as a seal appendant to a paper. Appendance, alt of appendency. Appendency, state of being appendant. Appendance, appendicle, of or like an appendix. Appendicate, to append. Appendication, an appendage. Appendicitis, inflammation of the vermiform appendix. Appendicle, a small appendage. Appendicular, relating to an appendicle. Appendiculate. Appendicularia, a genus of small free-swimming tunicata shaped somewhat like a tadpole and remarkable for resemblances to the larvae of other tunicata. It is the type of the order Copulata or Larvalia. See illustration in appendix. Appendiculata, an order of annelids, the pollock/ta. Appendiculate, having small appendages, forming an appendage. Appendixes, of appendix. Appendices, of appendix. Appendix, something appended or added, an appendage adjunct or concomitant. Appension, the act of appending. Apperceive, to perceive, to comprehend. Apperception, the mind's perception of itself as the subject or actor in its own states. Perception that reflects upon itself, sometimes intensified or energetic perception. Apparel, peril. Appertained, of appertain. Appertaining, of appertain. Appertain, to belong or pertain whether by right, nature, appointment, or custom. To relate. Appertainment, that which appertains to a person, an appurtenance. Appurtenance, alt of appurtenance. Appurtenance, see appurtenance. Appurtenant, belonging, appertaining. Appete, to seek for, to desire. Appetence, a longing, a desire, especially an ardent desire. Appetite, appetency. Appetencies, of appetency. Appetency, fixed and strong desire. ESP, natural desire, a craving, an eager appetite. Appetent, desiring, eagerly desirous. Appetibility, the quality of being desirable. Appetible, desirable, capable or worthy of being the object of desire. Appetite, the desire for some personal gratification either of the body or of the mind. Appetition, desire, a longing for or seeking after something. Appetitive, having the quality of desiring gratification, as appetitive power or faculty. Appetize, to make hungry, to whet the appetite of. Appetizer, something which creates or whets an appetite. Appetizing, exciting appetite, as appetizing food. Appian, of or pertaining to Appius. Applauded, of applaud. Applauding, of applaud. Applaud, to show approval of by clapping the hands, acclamation, or other significant sign. Applauder, one who applauds. Applausible, worthy of applause, praiseworthy. Applause, the act of applauding. Approbation and praise publicly expressed by clapping the hands, stamping, or tapping with the feet, acclamation, huzzas, or other means. Marked commendation. Applausive. Expressing applause, approbative. Apple. The fleshy pome or fruit of a rosaceous tree, Pyrus malus, cultivated in numberless varieties in the temperate zones. Apple-faced. Having a round, broad face like an apple. Applejack. Apple brandy. Applejawn. A kind of apple which by keeping becomes much withered, called also John apple. Apple pie. A pie made of apples, usually sliced or stewed, with spice and sugar. Apple squire. A pimp, a kept gallant. Applicable. Applicable, also compliant. Appliance. The act of applying, application. Applicability. The quality of being applicable or fit to be applied. Applicable. Capable of being applied, fit or suitable to be applied, having relevance, as this observation is applicable to the case under consideration. Applicancy. The quality or state of being applicable. Applicant. One who apples for something. One who makes request. A petitioner. Applicate. Applied or put to some use. Application. The act of applying or laying on in a literal sense, as the application of emollients to a diseased limb. Applicative. Capable of being applied or used. Applying. Applicatory. Practical. Applicatorily. By way of application. Applicatory. Having the property of applying. Applicative. Practical. Appliedly. By application. Applier. He who or that which applies. Applyment. Application. Applique. Ornamented with a pattern which has been cut out of another color or stuff, applied or transferred to a foundation, as applique lace, applique work. Applauded. Of applaud. Applauding. Of applaud. Applaud. To divide into plots or parts. To apportion. Applaudment. Apportionment. Applied. Of applaud. Applying. Of applaud. Apply. To lay or place. To put or adjust one thing to another. With to. As to apply the hand to the breast. To apply medicaments to a diseased part of the body. Appoggiatura. A passing tone preceding an essential tone and borrowing the time it occupies from that. A short auxiliary or grace note 1 degree above or below the principal note unless it be of the same harmony, generally indicated by a note of smaller size, as in the illustration above. It forms no essential part of the harmony. Appointed. Of appoint. Appointing. Of appoint. Appoint. To fix with power or firmness. To establish. To mark out. Appointable. Capable of being appointed or constituted. Appointee. A person appointed. Appointer. One who appoints or executes a power of appointment. Appointive. Subject to appointment, as an appointive office. Appointment. The act of appointing, designation of a person to hold an office or discharge a trust, as he erred by the appointment of unsuitable men. Appointer. The person who selects the appointee. See appointee to. Apporter. A bringer in, an importer. Apportioned. Of apportion. Apportioning. Of apportion. Apportion. To divide and assign in just proportion. To divide and distribute proportionally. To portion out. To allot. As to apportion undivided rights. To apportion time among various employments. Apportionateness. The quality of being apportioned or in proportion. Apportioner. One who apportions. Apportionment. The act of apportioning. A dividing into just proportions or shares. A division or shares. A division and assignment to each proprietor of his just portion of an undivided right or property. Oppose. To place opposite or before. To put or apply one thing to another. Apposed. Placed in apposition, mutually fitting as the mandibles of a bird's beak. Opposer. An examiner. One whose business is to put questions. Formerly in the English Court of Exchequer, an officer who audited the sheriff's accounts. Apposite, very applicable, well adapted, suitable or fit, relevant, pat, followed by to, as this argument is very apposite to the case. Apposition, the act of adding, application, accretion, appositional, pertaining to apposition, put in apposition syntactically, appositive, of or relating to apposition, in apposition, appraisable, capable of being appraised, appraisal, evaluation by an authorized person, an appraisement, appraised, of appraise, appraising, of appraise, appraise, to set a value, to estimate the worth of particularly by persons appointed for the purpose, as to appraise goods and chattels. Appraisement, the act of setting the value, valuation by an appraiser, estimation of worth. Appraiser, one who appraises, ESP, a person appointed and sworn to estimate and fix the value of goods or estates. Apprecation, earnest prayer, devout wish. Apprecatory, praying or wishing good. Appreciable, capable of being appreciated or estimated, large enough to be estimated, perceptible, as an appreciable quantity. Appreciant, appreciative, appreciated, of appreciate, appreciating, of appreciate, appreciate, to set a price or value on, to estimate justly, to value, appreciatingly, in an appreciating manner, with appreciation, appreciation, a just valuation or estimate of merit, worth, weight, etc., recognition of excellence. Appreciative, having or showing a just or ready appreciation or perception, as an appreciative audience. Appreciativeness, the quality of being appreciative, quick recognition of excellence. Appreciator, one who appreciates. Appreciatory, showing appreciation, appreciative, as appreciatory commendation. Apprehended, of apprehend, apprehending, of apprehend, apprehend, to take or seize, to take hold of. Apprehender, one who apprehends. Apprehensibility, the quality of being apprehensible. Apprehensible, capable of being apprehended or conceived. Apprehension, the act of seizing or taking hold of. Seizure, as the hand is an organ of apprehension. Apprehensive, capable of apprehending or quick to do so. Apt, discerning. Apprehensively, in an apprehensive manner, with apprehension of danger. Apprehensiveness, the quality or state of being apprehensive. Apprentice, one who is bound by indentures or by legal agreement to serve a mechanic or other person for a certain time with a view to learn the art or trade in which his master is bound to instruct him. Apprenticed, of apprentice. Apprenticing, of apprentice. Apprenticage, apprenticeship. Apprenticehood, apprenticeship. Apprenticeship, the service or condition of an apprentice, the state in which a person is gaining instruction in a trade or art under legal agreement. Oppressed, alt of appressed. Appressed, pressed close to. Apprising, of apprise. Apprise, appraisal. See appraisal. Apprise, to appraise, to value, to appreciate. Apprisement, appraisement. Appraiser, an appraiser. Approached, of approach. Approaching, of approach. Approach, to come or go near in place or time, to draw nigh, to advance nearer. Approachability, the quality of being approachable, approachableness. Approachable, capable of being approached, accessible, as approachable virtue. Approachableness, the quality or state of being approachable, accessibility. Approacher, one who approaches. Approachless, impossible to be approached. Approachment, approach. Approbate, approved. Approbation, proof, attestation. Approbative, approving or implying approbation. Approbativeness, the quality of being approbative. Approbator, one who approves. Approbatory, containing or expressing approbation, commendatory. Apprompt, to quicken, to prompt. Approof, trial, proof. Appropinquate, to approach. Appropinquation, a drawing nigh, approach. Appropinquity, nearness, propinquity. Approper, to appropriate. Appropriable, capable of being appropriated, set apart, sequestered, or assigned exclusively to a particular use. Appropriament, what is peculiarly one's own, peculiar qualification. Appropriate, set apart for a particular use or person, hence, belonging peculiarly, peculiar, suitable, fit, proper. Appropriated, of appropriate. Appropriating, of appropriate. Appropriately, in an appropriate or proper manner. Fitly, properly. Appropriateness, the state or quality of being appropriate, peculiar fitness. Appropriation, the act of setting apart or assigning to a particular use or person, or of taking to oneself in exclusion of all others. Application to a special use or purpose, as of a piece of ground for a park or of money to carry out some object. Appropriative, appropriating, making or tending to appropriation, as an appropriative act. Appropriator, one who appropriates. Approvable, worthy of being approved, meritorious. Approval, approbation, sanction. Approvance, approval. Approved, of approve. Approving, of approve. Approve, to show to be real or true, to prove. Approvely, so as to secure approbation, in an approved manner. Approvement, approbation. Approver, one who approves. Formerly one who made proof or trial. Approximate, approaching, proximate, nearly resembling. Approximated, of approximate. Approximating, of approximate. Approximately, with approximation, so as to approximate, nearly. Approximation, the act of approximating, a drawing, advancing, or being near. Approach, also the result of approximating. Approximative, approaching, approximate. Approximator, one who or that which approximates. Appui, a support or supporter, a stay, a prop. Appulse, a driving or running towards. Approach, impulse, also the act of striking against. Appulsion, a driving or striking against, an appulse. Appulsive, striking against, impinging, as the appulsive influence of the planets. Appulsively, by appulsion. Appurtenance, that which belongs to something else, an adjunct, an appendage, an accessory, something annexed to another thing more worthy. In common parlance and legal acceptation, something belonging to another thing as principal and which passes as incident to it, as a right of way or other easement to land. Appurtenant, annexed or pertaining to some more important thing. Accessory, incident, as a right of way appurtenant to land or buildings. Apricot, to bask in the sun. Application, basking in the sun. Apricot, a fruit allied to the plum of an orange color, oval shape, and delicious taste. Also the tree, Prunus armoniaca of Linnaeus, which bears this fruit. By cultivation it has been introduced throughout the temperate zone. April, the fourth month of the year. A priori, characterizing that kind of reasoning which deduces consequences from definitions formed or principles assumed, or which infers effects from causes previously known. Deductive or deductively, the reverse of a posteriori. A priorism, an a priori principle. A priority, the quality of being innate in the mind or prior to experience. A priori reasoning. Aprocta, a group of turbellaria in which there is no anal aperture. Aproctus, without an anal office. Apron, An article of dress of cloth, leather, or other stuff worn on the forepart of the body to keep the clothes clean, to defend them from injury, or as a covering. It is commonly tied at the waist by strings. Aproned, wearing an apron. Apronfuls, of apronful. Apronful, the quantity an apron can hold. Apronless, without an apron. Apron man, a man who wears an apron. A laboring man, a mechanic. Apron string, the string of an apron. Oprosos, opportunely or opportune, seasonably or seasonable. Apse, a projecting part of a building, ESP of a church, having in the plan a polygonal or semicircular termination and most often projecting from the east end. In early churches, the eastern apse was occupied by seats for the bishop and clergy. Apsidal, of or pertaining to the apsides of an orbit. Apsides, see apsis. Apsis, one of the 2 points of an orbit as of a planet or satellite which are at the greatest and least distance from the central body, corresponding to the aphelion and perihelion of a planet or to the apogee and perigee of the moon. Apartment, fit or fitted, suited, suitable, appropriate. Optable, capable of being adapted. Aptate, to make fit. Aptera, insects without wings, constituting the 7th linen order of insects, an artificial group which included crustaceous spiders, centipedes, and even worms. These animals are now placed in several distinct classes and orders. Apteral, Apterus, Apteron, one of the Aptera. Apteria, naked spaces between the feathered areas of birds. See Pterolili. Apterus, destitute of wings. Apteral, as Apterus insects. Apteryges, an order of birds including the genus Apteryx. Apteryx, a genus of New Zealand birds about the size of a hen with only short rudiments of wings, armed with a claw and without a tail, the kiwi. It is allied to the gigantic extinct moas of the same country. 5 species are known. Aptitude, a natural or acquired disposition or capacity for a particular purpose or tendency to a particular action or effect, as oil has an aptitude to burn. Aptitudinal, suitable, fit. Aptly, in an apt or suitable manner. Fitly, properly, pertinently, appropriately, readily. Aptness, fitness, suitableness, appropriateness, as the aptness of things to their end. Aptote, a noun which has no distinction of cases, an indeclinable noun. Aptotic, pertaining to or characterized by aptotes, uninflected, as aptotic languages. Apticus, a shelly plate found in the terminal chambers of ammonite shells. Some authors consider them to be jaws, others opercula. Apis, a genus of freshwater phylipod crustaceans. See phylipod. Aparetic, without fever, applied to days when there is an intermission of fever. Apyrexia, alt of apyrexy. Apyrexy, the absence or intermission of fever. Apirexial, relating to apyrexy. Apyrus, incombustible, capable of sustaining a strong heat without alteration of form or properties. Aqua, water, a word much used in pharmacy and the old chemistry in various signification determined by the word or words annexed. Aquafortis, nitric acid. Aquamarine, a transparent pale green variety of beryl used as a gem. See beryl. Aquapuncture, the introduction of water subcutaneously for the relief of pain. Aquarelle, a design or painting in thin, transparent watercolors, also the mode of painting in such colors. Aquarellist, a painter in thin, transparent watercolors. Aquarial, alt of aquarian. Aquarian, of or pertaining to an aquarium. Aquariums, of aquarium. Aquaria, of aquarium. Aquarium, an artificial pond or a globe or tank, usually with glass sides, in which living specimens of aquatic animals or plants are kept. Aquarius, The water bearer, the 11th sign in the zodiac, which the sun enters about the 20th of January, so called from the rains which prevail at that season in Italy and the East. Aquatic, pertaining to water, growing in water, living and swimming in or frequenting the margins of waters, as aquatic plants and fowls. Aquatical, aquatic, aquatile, inhabiting the water. Aquatent, alt of aquatinta, aquatinta, a kind of etching in which spaces are bitten by the use of aquafortis, by which an effect is produced resembling a drawing in watercolors or India ink. Also the engraving produced by this method. Aqueduct, a conductor conduit or artificial channel for conveying water, especially one for supplying large cities with water. Aquity, wateriness. Aqueous, partaking of the nature of water or abounding with it. Watery. Aqueousness, wateriness. Aquiferous, consisting or conveying water or a watery fluid. As aquiferous vessels, the aquiferous system. Aquiform, having the form of water. Aquili, of Aquila. Aquila, a genus of eagles. Aquilated, adorned with eagles' heads. Aquiline, belonging to or like an eagle. Aquiline, the north wind. Aquiferous, secreting water, applied to certain glands. Aquitanian, of or pertaining to Aquitania, now called Gascony. Aquose, watery, aqueous. Aquosity, the condition of being wet or watery, wateriness. Air, before. Era, the altar, a southern constellation south of the tail of the scorpion. Arab, one of a swarthy race occupying Arabia and numerous in Syria, northern Africa, etc. Arabesque, a style of ornamentation either painted inlaid or carved in low relief. It consists of a pattern in which plants, fruits, foliage, etc., as well as figures of men and animals, real or imaginary, are fantastically interlaced or put together. Arabesqued, ornamented in the style of arabesques. Arabian, of or pertaining to Arabia or its inhabitants. Arabic, of or pertaining to Arabia or the Arabians. Arabical, relating to Arabia, Arabic. Arabin, a carbohydrate isomeric with cane sugar contained in gum arabic from which it is extracted as a white amorphous substance. Arabinose, a sugar of the composition C5H10O5 obtained from cherry gum by boiling it with dilute sulfuric acid. Arabism, an Arabic idiom peculiarly of language. Arabist, one well versed in the Arabic language or literature, also formerly one who followed the Arabic system of surgery. Arable, fit for plowing or tillage, hence often applied to land which has been plowed or tilled. Araby, the country of Arabia. Arakanese, of or pertaining to Arakan, a province of British Burma. Aracari, a South American bird of the genus Pleuroglossus allied to the toucans. There are several species. Aris, to tear up by the roots, to draw away. Araceous, of or pertaining to an order of plants of which the genus Arum is the type. Arachnid, an arachnidon. Arachnida, one of the classes of arthropoda. See illustration in appendix. Arachnidon, one of the arachnida. Arachnidial, of or pertaining to the arachnida. Arachnidium, the glandular organ in which the material for the web of spiders is secreted. Arachnitis, inflammation of the arachnoid membrane. Arachnoid, resembling a spider's web, cobweb-like. Arachnoidal, pertaining to the arachnoid membrane. Arachnoid. Arachnoidea, same as arachnida. Arachnological, of or pertaining to arachnology. Arachnologist, one who is versed in or studies arachnology. Arachnology, the department of zoology which treats of spiders and other arachnida. Areometer, see areometer. Areostyle, see intercolumniation. Areosystyle, see intercolumniation. Aragonese, of or pertaining to Aragon in Spain or to its inhabitants. Aragonite, a mineral identical in composition with calcite or carbonate of lime, but differing from it in its crystalline form and some of its physical characters. Araguato, a South American monkey, the ursine howler, Mycetes sinus. See howler, N2. Erase, to raise. Iraq, same as Eric. Aramean, alt of Aramean. Aramean, of or pertaining to the Syrians and Chaldeans or to their language, Aramaic. Aramaic, pertaining to Aram or to the territory inhabitants' language or literature of Syria and Mesopotamia, Aramean. Specifically applied to the northern branch of the Semitic family of languages, including Syriac and Chaldee. Aramaism, an idiom of the Aramaic. Araneida, alt of Araneoidea. Araneoidea, see Aranina. Araneidin, of or pertaining to the Aranina or spiders. Araniiform, having the form of a spider. Aranina, the order of arachnida that includes the spiders. Aranios, of the aspect of a spider's web, arachnoid. Araneous, cobweb-like, extremely thin and delicate like a cobweb, as the araneous membrane of the eye. See arachnoid. Arangos, of Arango. Arango, a bead of rough carnelian. Arangos were formerly imported from Bombay for use in the African slave trade. Arapaima, a large freshwater food fish of South America. Arara, the palm or great black cockatoo of Australia, Microglossus adorymus. Aeration, plowing, tillage. Aeratery, contributing to tillage. Araucaria, a genus of tall conifers of the pine family. The species are confined mostly to South America and Australia. The wood cells differ from those of other in having the dots in their lateral surfaces in 2 or 3 rows and the dots of contiguous rows alternating. The seeds are edible. Araucarian, relating to or of the nature of the Araucaria. The earliest conifers in geological history were mostly Araucarian. Arbalest, alt of arbalist. Arbalist, a crossbow consisting of a steel bow set in a shaft of wood furnished with a string and a trigger and a mechanical device for bending the bow. It served to throw arrows, darts, bullets, etc. Arbalester, alt of arbalister. Arbalister, a crossbowman. Arbiter, a person appointed or chosen by parties to determine a controversy between them. Arbitrable, capable of being decided by arbitration. Determinable. Arbitrage, judgment by an arbiter, authoritative determination. Arbitral, of or relating to an arbiter or an arbitration. Arbitrament, determination, decision, arbitration. Arbitrarily, in an arbitrary manner, by will only, despotically, absolutely. Arbitrariness, the quality of being arbitrary, despoticalness, tyranny. Arbitrarious, arbitrary, despotic. Arbitrary, depending on will or discretion, not governed by any fixed rules, as an arbitrary decision, an arbitrary punishment. Arbitrated, of arbitrate. Arbitrating, of arbitrate. Arbitrate, to hear and decide as arbitrators, as to choose to arbitrate a disputed case. Arbitration, the hearing and determination of a cause between parties in controversy by a person or persons chosen by the parties. Arbitrator, a person or one of 2 or more persons chosen by parties who have a controversy to determine their differences. See arbitration. Arbitratrix, a female who arbitrates or judges. Arbitress, a female arbiter, an arbitratrix. Arblast, a crossbow. See arbalest. Arbor, a kind of latticework formed of or covered with vines, branches of trees, or other plants for shade. A bower. Arborary, of or pertaining to trees, arboreal. Arborator, one who plants or who prunes trees. Arbor Diane, a precipitation of silver in a beautiful arborescent form. Arboreal, of or pertaining to a tree or to trees, of nature of trees. Arbored, furnished with an arbor, lined with trees. Arboreous, having the form, constitution, or habits of a proper tree in distinction from a shrub. Arborescence, the state of being arborescent, the resemblance to a tree in minerals or crystallizations or groups of crystals in that form, as the arborescence produced by precipitating silver. Arborescent, resembling a tree, becoming woody in stalk. Dendritic, having crystallizations disposed like the branches and twigs of a tree. Arborate, a small tree or shrub. Arboreta, of arboretum. Arboretum, a place in which a collection of rare trees and shrubs is cultivated for scientific or educational purposes. Arborical, relating to trees. Arborical, tree inhabiting, set of certain birds. Arboricultural, pertaining to arboriculture. Arboriculture, the cultivation of trees and shrubs chiefly for timber or for ornamental purposes. Arboriculturist, one who cultivates trees. Arboriform, tree-like in shape. Arborist, one who makes trees his study or who is versed in the knowledge of trees. Arborization, the appearance or figure of a tree or plant as in minerals or fossils, a dendrite. Arborized, having a tree-like appearance. Arborous, formed by trees. Arborvine, a species of bindweed. Arborvitae, an evergreen tree of the cypress tribe, genus Thuja. The American species is the T. occidentalis. Arbuscle, a dwarf tree, one in size between a shrub and a tree-like shrub. Arbuscular, of or pertaining to a dwarf tree, shrub-like. Arbustive, containing copses of trees or shrubs, covered with shrubs. Arbutus, alt of arbuate, the strawberry tree, a genus of evergreen shrubs of the heath family. It has a berry externally resembling the strawberry, the arbuate tree. Arc, a portion of a curved line, as the arc of a circle or of an ellipse. Arcade, a series of arches with the columns or piers which support them, the spandrels above, and other necessary appurtenances, sometimes open serving as an entrance or to give light, sometimes closed at the back, as in the cut, and forming a decorative feature. Arcaded, furnished with an arcade. Arcadia, a mountainous and picturesque district of Greece in the heart of the Peloponnesus, whose people were distinguished for contentment and rural happiness. Arcadian, alt of Arcadic. Arcadic, of or pertaining to Arcadia, pastoral, ideally rural, as Arcadian simplicity or scenery. Arcane, hidden, secret. Arcana, of arcanum. Arcanum, a secret, a mystery, generally used in the plural. Arcbutant, a flying buttress. Arch, any part of a curved line. Arched, of arch. Arching, of arch. Archdash, a prefix signifying chief, as an archbuilder, archfiend. Archean, ancient, pertaining to the earliest period in geological history. Archaeography, a description of or a treatise on antiquity or antiquities. Archaeolithic, of or pertaining to the earliest Stone Age, applied to a prehistoric period preceding the Paleolithic Age. Archaeologian, an archaeologist. Archaeologic, alt of archaeological. Archaeological, relating to archaeology or antiquities, as archaeological researches. Archaeologist, archaeology, the science or study of antiquities, ESP, prehistoric antiquities such as the remains of buildings or monuments of an early epoch, inscriptions, implements, and other relics, written manuscripts, etc. Archaeopteryx, a fossil bird of the Jurassic period remarkable for having a long tapering tail of many vertebrae, with feathers along each side and jaws armed with teeth, with other reptilian characteristics. Archaeostomatus, applied to a gastrula when the blastopore does not entirely close up. Archaeozoic, like or belonging to the earliest forms of animal life. Archaic, of or characterized by antiquity or archaism, antiquated, obsolescent. Archaical, archaic, archaism, an ancient, antiquated, or old-fashioned word expression or idiom, a word or form of speech no longer in common use. Archaist, antiquary. Archaistic, like or imitative of anything archaic, pertaining to an archaism. Archaized, of archaize. Archaizing, of archaize. Archaize, to make appear archaic or antique. Archangel, a chief angel, one high in the celestial hierarchy. Archangelic, of or pertaining to archangels, of the nature of or resembling an archangel. Archbishop, a chief bishop, a church dignitary of the first class, often called a metropolitan or primate, who superintends the conduct of the suffragan bishops in his province and also exercises episcopal authority in his own diocese. Archbishopric, the jurisdiction or office of an archbishop, the see or province over which archbishop exercises archiepiscopal authority. Archbrick, a wedge-shaped brick used in the building of an arch. Archbutler, a chief butler, an officer of the German Empire. Archchamberlain, a chief chamberlain, an officer of the old German Empire whose office was similar to that of the Great Chamberlain in England. Archchancellor, a chief chancellor, an officer in the old German Empire who presided over the secretaries of the court. Archchemic, of supreme chemical powers. Archdeacon, in England an ecclesiastical dignitary next in rank below a bishop whom he assists and by whom he is appointed though with independent authority. Archdeaconry, the district office or residence of an archdeacon. See benefice. Archdeaconship, the office of an archdeacon. Archdiocese, the diocese of an archbishop. Archducal, of or pertaining to an archduke or archduchy. Archduchess, the consort of an archduke, also a princess of the imperial family of Austria. See Archduke. Archduchy, the territory of an archduke or archduchess. Archduke, a prince of the imperial family of Austria. Archdukedom, an archduchy. Archebiosis, the origination of living matter from non-living. See abiogenesis. Archegonial, relating to the archegonium. Archegonium, the pistilidium or female organ in the higher cryptogamic plants corresponding to the pistil in flowering plants. Archegony, spontaneous generation, abiogenesis. Archaeology, the science of or a treatise on first principles. Archencephala, the division that includes man alone. Archenemy, a principal enemy, specifically Satan, the grand adversary of mankind. Archenteric, relating to the archenteron, as archenteric invagination. Archenteron, the primitive enteron or undifferentiated digestive sac of a gastrula or other embryo. See illust, under invagination. Archaeology, alt of archaeological. Archaeological, same as archaeology, etc. Archer, a bowman, one skilled in the use of the bow and arrow. Archeress, a female archer. Archerfish, a small fish, toxotes jaculator, of the East Indies, so called from its ejecting drops of water from its mouth at its prey. The name is also applied to Chaetodon rostratus. Archership, the art or skill of an archer. Archery, the use of the bow and arrows in battle, hunting, etc. The art, practice, or skill of shooting with a bow and arrows. Arches, PL of archen. Archetypal, of or pertaining to an archetype, consisting a model, real or ideal, or pattern, original. Archetypally, with reference to the archetype, originally. Parts archetypally distinct. Archetype, the original pattern or model of a work. or the model from which a thing is made or formed. Archetypical, relating to an archetype, archetypal. Archeus, the vital principle or force which, according to the Paracelsians, presides over the growth and continuation of living beings, the anima mundi or plastic power of the old philosophers. Archidash, a prefix signifying chief arch, as architect archiepiscopal, in Biol and Anad. It usually means primitive original ancestral, as Archipterygium, the primitive fin or wing. Archaeannelida, a group of annelida remarkable for having no external segments or distinct ventral nerve ganglions. Archiater, chief physician, a term applied on the continent of Europe to the first or body physician of princes and to the first physician of some cities. Archiblastula, a hollow blastula supposed to be the primitive form, a C/loblastula. Archical, chief, primary, primordial. Archidiaconal, of or pertaining to an archdeacon. Archiepiscopacy, that form of episcopacy in which the chief power is in the hands of archbishops. Archiepiscopal, of or pertaining to an archbishop, as Canterbury is an archiepiscopal see. Archiepiscopality, the station or dignity of an archbishop, archiepiscopacy. Archiepiscopate, the office of an archbishop, an archbishopric. Archire, the higher order of clergy in Russia, including metropolitans, archbishops, and bishops. Urchil, a violet dye obtained from several species of lichen, Richella tinctoria, etc., which grow on maritime rocks in the Canary and Cape Verde Islands, etc. Archilochian, of or pertaining to the satiric Greek poet Archilochus, as Archilochian meter. Archimage, alt of Archimagus. Archimagus, the high priest of the Persian Magi or worshippers of fire. Archimandrite, a chief of a monastery corresponding to abbot in the Roman Catholic Church. Archimedean, of or pertaining to Archimedes, a celebrated Greek philosopher, constructed on the principle of Archimedes' screw, as Archimedean drill, propeller, etc. Archimedes, an extinct genus of Bryozoa characteristic of the subcarboniferous rocks. Its form is that of a screw. Archipelagic, of or pertaining to an archipelago. Archipelago, the Grecian archipelago or Aegean Sea separating Greece from Asia Minor. It is studded with a vast number of small islands. Archipterygium, the primitive form of fin like that of Ceratidis. Architect, a person skilled in the art of building, one who understands architecture or makes it his occupation to form plans and designs of buildings and to superintend the artificers employed. Architective, used in building, proper for building. Architectonic, alt of architectonical. Architectonical, pertaining to a master builder or to architecture, evincing skill in designing or construction, constructive. Architectonics, the science of architecture. Architector, an architect. Architectress, a female architect. Architectural, of or pertaining to the art of building, conform to the rules of architecture. Architecture, the art or science of building, especially the art of building houses, churches, bridges, and other structures for the purposes of civil life, often called civil architecture. Architeuthis, a genus of gigantic cephalopods allied to the squids found ESP in the North Atlantic and about New Zealand. Architrave, the lower division of an entablature or that part which rests immediately on the column, especially in classical architecture. See column. Architraved, furnished with an architrave. Archival, pertaining to or contained in archives or records. Archives, of archive. Archive, the place in which public records or historic documents are kept. Archivist, a keeper of archives or records. Archivolt, the architectural member surrounding the curved opening of an arch corresponding to the architrave in the case of a square opening. Archlute, alt of arcolet. Arcolet, a large theorbo or double-necked lute formerly in use, having the bass strings doubled with an octave and the higher strings with a unison. Archly, in an arch manner, with attractive slyness or roguishness, slyly, waggishly. Archmarshal, the Grand Marshal of the old German Empire, a dignity that to the Elector of Saxony. Archness, the quality of being arch, cleverness, sly humor free from malice, waggishness. Archon, one of the chief magistrates in ancient Athens, especially by preeminence the first of the 9 chief magistrates. Archonship, the office of an archon. Archontate, an archon's term of office. Archons, the group including man alone. Archprelate, an archbishop or other chief prelate. Archpresbyter, same as archpriest. Archpresbytery, the absolute dominion of presbytery. Archpriest, a chief priest, also a kind of vicar or a rural dean. Archprimate, the chief primate. Archstone, a wedge-shaped stone used in an arch, a voussoir. Archtrader, a chief or transcendent trader. Archtreasurer, a chief treasurer, specifically the great treasurer of the German Empire. Archway, a way or passage under an arch. Archwife, a big masculine wife. Archwise, arch-shaped. Archy, arched as archy brows. Arciform, having the form of an arch, curved. Archograph, an instrument for drawing a circular arc without the use of a central point, a cyclograph. Arctation, constriction or contraction of some natural passage, as in constipation from inflammation. Arctic, pertaining to or situated under the northern constellation called the Bear, northern, frigid, as the Arctic Pole Circle region ocean, an Arctic expedition night temperature. Arctisca, a group of arachnida, see illust, in appendix. Arctogeal, of or pertaining to Arctic lands, as the arctogeal fauna. Arctoidea, a group of the carnivora that includes the bears, weasels, etc. Arcturus, a fixed star of the first magnitude in the constellation Boötes. Arcual, of or pertaining to an arc. Arcuate, alt of arcuate. Arcuate, bent or curved in the form of a bow. Arcuately, in the form of a bow. Arcuation, the act of bending or curving. Incurvation, the state of being bent, crookedness. Arcubalist, a crossbow. Arcubalister, a crossbowman, one who used the arcubalist. Arquebus, see arquebus. Artisine, a very fine sort of Persian silk. Ardency, heat. Ardent, hot or burning, causing a sensation of burning. Fiery, as ardent spirits, that is distilled liquors, an ardent fever. Ardently, in an ardent manner, eagerly, with warmth, affectionately, passionately. Ardentness, ardency. Ardor, heat in a literal sense, as the ardor of the sun's rays. Arduous, steep and lofty in a literal sense, hard to climb. Arduously, in an arduous manner, with difficulty or laboriousness. Arduousness, the quality of being arduous, difficulty of execution. Arduous, burning, ardent. The present indicative plural of the substantive verb to be, but etymologically a different word from be or was. Amardar, and is all come from the root as. Areas, of area. Area, any plane surface as of the floor of a room or church or of the ground within an enclosure, an open space in a building. Areate, alt of areate. Areate, to tell, declare, explain, or interpret, to divine, to guess, as to areate a riddle or a dream. Aerial, of or pertaining to an area, as aerial interstices, the areas or spaces enclosed by the reticulate vessels of leaves. Aerier, to raise, to set up, to stir up. Erica, a genus of palms, one species of which produces the erica nut or betel nut, which is chewed in India with the leaf of the piper betel and lime. Areek, in a reeking condition. Arfaction, the act of drying or the state of growing dry. Arify, to dry or make dry. Arenas, of arena. Arene, of arena. Arena, the area in the central part of an amphitheater in which the gladiators fought and other shows were exhibited, so called because it was covered with sand. Arenaceous, sandy or consisting largely of sand, of the nature of sand, easily disintegrating into sand, friable as arenaceous limestone. Arenarious, sandy as arenarious soil. Arnation, a sand bath, application of hot sand to the body. Arrendator, in some provinces of Russia, one who farms the rents or revenues. Orang, alt of Arenga. Arenga, a palm tree, Sagirus saccharifer, which furnishes sago wine and fibers for ropes, the Gamuti palm. Arenicolite, an ancient wormhole in sand preserved in the rocks. Arenolitic, of or pertaining to sandstone, as arenolitic mountains. Arnos, sandy, full of sand. Arenulus, full of fine sand, like sand. Areolae, of areola. Areola, an interstice or small space as between the cracks of the surface in certain crustaceous lichens, or as between the fibers composing organs or vessels that interlace, or as between the nervures of an insect's wing. Areolar, pertaining to or like an areola, filled with interstices or areolae. Areolate, alt of areolated. Areolated, divided into small spaces or areolations as the wings of insects, the leaves of plants, or the receptacle of compound flowers. Areolation, division into areolae. Areole, same as areola. Areolate, a small enclosed area. ESP, one of the small spaces on the wings of insects circumscribed by the veins. Areometer, an instrument for measuring the specific gravity of fluids, a form hydrometer. Areometric, alt of areometrical. Areometrical, pertaining to or measured by an areometer. Areometry, the art or process of measuring the specific gravity of fluids. Areopagist, see Areopagite. Areopagite, a member of the Areopagus. Areopagitic, pertaining to the Areopagus. Areopagus, the highest judicial court at Athens. Its sessions were held on Mars Hill, hence any high court or tribunal. Areostyle, see intercolumniation and areostyle. Areosystyle, see intercolumniation and areosystyle. Arear, see arrier. Arist, a support for the spear when couched for the attack. Arit, to reckon, to ascribe, to impute. Aretaics, the ethical theory which excludes all relations between virtue and happiness, the science of virtue, contrasted with eudaimonics. Aretology, that part of moral philosophy which treats of virtue, its nature, and the means of attaining to it.